Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Diptii Shah, and welcome to the #Businesswomen podcast. Today, I have with me the CEO and founder of Meraki, Miss Yosha Gupta. Hello, Yosha, and welcome to my show.
Excited to be here, Dipti, and thank you. You pronounced our name perfectly. A lot of people mispronounce me, Meraki. I'm so glad that you've got it exactly right.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Yosha, let's begin from the beginning. How did this idea of building a platform like Meraki came to your mind?
Wow, it was serendipity, honestly. I mean, the avatar we have now is very different from where we started. The mission was the same, but what got it started was literally I got a Gucci handbag hand painted by a Madhubani artist. And I was in Hong Kong at that point of time. And in Hong Kong, like people used to people started asking me, is this a limited edition Gucci? And I'd be like, yeah, very limited edition. It's literally like, one of its kind. Only I have it. No one else in the world has it. And that, got people asking me, oh, can you get this done for us? It's beautiful. And for me, I come from a product design background. I've always worked in product design and tech. So looking at customer insights is something that, comes very naturally to me. And for me, this was a very, clear customer insight that our arts, our heritage arts and crafts are fading away, not because people don't like it. It's A, people just don't know about it. B, they don't have access to it. And C, even if they have some access to it, they probably don't find it in the formats that they want to incorporate in their contemporary lifestyles, right? So that literally for me was the moment that, okay, this is, it looks like there's something here. Let's try it out. And it started as a passion project that, I thought, okay, I'm in Hong Kong. I'm at the perfect place to kind of, source high quality handbags from China, send it to India, send it to our artists across India, create a network and get them to hand paint and really tell the stories of, the artists, shine the spotlight on the master artists creating these hand painted handbags, shine a spotlight on the stories behind the motifs and on the arts itself as well, right? Because India has over 3,000 styles of traditional arts and crafts. Most of us don't know about any of these, right? Like we might know a few of them. So that's literally how it started. But, rewind 2.5 years. I mean, some of our collections did really well. We had a beautiful wood collection, which was very signature, and people really loved it. But 2.5 years ago, when the pandemic hit, our sales just plummeted, right? Who was buying a handbag in the middle of the pandemic? But more importantly, the artists and the artisans that we were working with, they were struggling a lot because they're not digitally enabled at all. In fact, I would go as far as saying that they're digitally marginalized. They don't have a voice or presence in the online world at all, which meant that, I mean, obviously we weren't being able to give them any work at that point of time. And their regular sources of income, which is typically exhibitions in person or tourism in their towns or villages, none of that was happening, which meant literally zero sources of income. And so we started getting calls like, oh, can you lend us some money? We'll give it back later. And for them, they're proud people. For them to ask, for help like this is something that, they would never do. So it was clear that these are very desperate times. And we thought, okay, we need to try something, man. I mean, there's something that we can try and do. And we realized that the biggest asset we had was actually our artists, right? Our master artists, their knowledge, their skill, the fact, that they had this, these arts which have been handed over to them over generations and they can teach that. And on the consumer side, people were at home, they were looking for interesting things to do. They couldn't really go out, they couldn't travel. They were looking for like this feeling to connect. So it just almost felt like, okay, let's try it out as an experiment. So we launched online live art workshops. And the first workshop was my family across the world. The second workshop were my friends across the world. And we launched it as a pandemic relief effort because to us, like we were still a brand and this was a pandemic relief effort. So, all the income we were making from that, we were passing to the artists. And 4.5, 5 months of doing that, we realized that this has done way better than anything else we've tried before. We've actually been able to build a community for the first time, like a really strong community. Patrons who are talking about us, who are spreading the word, who are posting about us on social media, which is helping get more and more people. So word of mouth was really spreading. And so then we decided this is what we need to be doing. And that's it. Like that's no looking back from there on. That's what our model has been. And everything that we've been building from there on has kind of been based on customer insights from these live art workshops.
What does Meraki mean? How did you decide on this name?
The initial name was actually Meraki, which is a beautiful Greek word, which means when you do something with so much heart and soul that you leave a part of your soul in your work. which fit really well with what we were doing. I mean, it's our artists who are leaving a part of, their heritage and their generational history on every bag that they were hand painting. So it felt like a really good, fit. But after a couple of years, after a year or so, this name came on this BuzzFeed list that 10 foreign words which have beautiful meanings. And after that, like every other company started being Meraki, and we decided, okay, like we need to kind of, rebrand a little bit. And that's when we came on the idea, because our social media handle was always me Meraki, me_Meraki. Our website was that as well. So we thought actually this is a great, name itself, me Meraki, because it's differentiated. But more importantly, the me in the me Meraki is our patrons and our community. And the idea of connecting them to our artists and our master artists and artisans, that fits really well. So that's how, me Meraki was born from that. So the origin is Meraki, and then me Meraki became, a later name, because it felt like a much better fit as well, that, our community and connecting them to our artists.
Yosha, the first step in getting into an arts and culture type of platform or business is, having that idea, or that, that thing in you that you can identify art. Are you creative yourself? I mean, do you have a background in the arts? Where did you start from?
So my career has not been in the arts. I've actually worked in fintech for over 15 years. But I do often end up saying that my career has been the arts without having a career in the arts, because it's been something which has been a very integral part of my life throughout. So I don't know if you've heard of this organization called SCMP, Society for Promotion of Indian Classical Music and
right?
Culture amongst Youth. Yeah, it's one of the biggest volunteer-run movements to promote, not just hand-painted and handmade heritage arts and crafts, but like performing arts and traditional arts, theater, music, dance. And I've been a volunteer with them since I was in school. So I went to Maharani Gayatri Devi in Jaipur, started getting a lot of exposure from there. Then I went to Lady Shri Ram College. I was still a volunteer there in my business school, MDI. Then when I moved to Hong Kong, and I've lived in Hong Kong for over 13 years, I started the SPICMAKE chapter there and organized like 100+ events over the course of 7-8 years. And this was purely for the love of it, because I enjoyed like watching these traditional performances, meeting traditional artists and artisans. So yeah, it's been a part of my life. And I think it was, now I say that I've almost manifested me Meraki as a business, because it's, I've always been very viscerally drawn to traditional arts and crafts. And my career has been in technology, and I've also done a little bit of impact-focused work during my fintech days when I worked with the World Bank Group and Gates Foundation. I've done very interesting projects with them. So what I'm doing now is pretty much at the trifecta of the three things that I love, which is artisanship, technology, and impact. So yeah, I feel like I've almost manifested this work.
Absolutely. It's like forward integration for you. Some sort of forward integration.
Yeah.
Talking about technology, when you build an e-commerce company, a big platform like yours, how much of technology, are you okay with? Do you code? Do you think coding is very important these days?
I don't code, but I've been a product manager in tech all my, my career has been that. So I understand how it works, how to bring things together, most importantly, how to translate customer insights into good user experience. I think that's primarily what my background has been. And that's a very useful skill. And it's a skill which anybody can acquire, to be honest, right? It just needs empathy, understanding, listening, and the ability to observe. And, there's enough and more courses available. The whole concept of human-centered design is very, very, is very prevalent these days. So I think that's something anybody can pick up. But in terms of being able to build a platform, honestly, like there's so much available now. Like, you don't really need to build anything from scratch. There's, coding, there's platforms available for everything. What you need to do is, again, like I mentioned, take those customer insights, find the best platform already available, bring things together, craft it into, good user experience, which really translates your users' requirements into, something on your platform, right? But honestly, I think like there's so much conversation right now literally about the end of coding as well, because with AI platforms like ChatGPT and all coming in, you can literally give it instructions that, hey, what's the best way to code XYZ, and it'll literally give you like step-by-step instructions as well, right? So no, I don't think coding is a requirement, to be honest. Like being able to observe in your customers, being able to really pinpoint some customer insight and then match it off to, can there be a market requirement for it? Can this be a big enough market, right? I think that's way more important than being able to know how to code.
How would you define a culture tech platform?
Yes, this is a word we've coined ourselves, because what we're doing is something very new. No one's really taken this approach to the artisanal space. What this means basically is that there's the traditional creative and culture industry, right? Like where people make products working with artisans, everything handmade, basically. That's the traditional creative and culture industry. And then there's edtech, right? Like where people are creating platforms where you can learn just about anything on the face of earth, right? What we are trying to do is create an intersection, a Venn diagram, literally, which is, intersecting between these two, that we're taking the traditional creative and culture industry and we're creating a space where our master artists and artisans can actually teach anybody across the world their particular art or craft, right? But we think that's really important because, number one, when people really experience these arts, in a much more experiential and immersive way, that's when they also understand the effort that goes behind it, how everything like follows 20 steps before that, right? So that's when they can actually become true evangelists and patrons of these arts. So we think that, it's very important to create these immersive experiences and create this content which can then translate into more opportunities for commerce, right? So that's what we mean by a culture tech platform, that taking the traditional creative and culture industry, using tech as much as possible to create content like, pre-recorded masterclasses, live art workshops, which then creates opportunities to sell their products in a much more better and experiential way.
When did you start? In which year? May I know?
The initial avatar was about 4.5 years ago, which is when we were creating handbags. We did that for about 2 years. And then when the pandemic hit, we completely pivoted, right, to this live art workshops model, to masterclasses and the arts marketplace. So that's been about 2.5 years. And we actually incorporated a new organization at that point of time as Meraki, because this was a completely new model. We were not an inventory-based model. We were a marketplace model where we're not holding inventory. We're kind of creating the platform, creating the technology for enabling content from the artisans as well as, their own products as well.
At the center of your business model are the primary stakeholders, which are the artisans, right? The artists
Absolutely.
and their art. So when you decided to create this platform, how did you approach them and what did you tell them?
I think, again, because I had a little bit of this, connection with the arts through Spick McKay, I had a little bit of a network. There was a little bit of credibility. They knew me. Some of them knew me. My mom is an amateur artist. Like, she's worked with a few artisans as well, because our whole home in, India is sort of covered from top to bottom in traditional art, including wall murals in our home as well. So there was a little small network of artists and artisans that I sort of knew. So at least with them, and first of all, I was literally using myself as marketing research, right? I was getting my own bags hand painted. I was getting my clothes hand painted, my jewelry hand painted. So it was literally just an experiment in the beginning. And they were more than happy to experiment because they knew me and it was something interesting. It was something they hadn't done before. So they were willing to experiment. But obviously growing the platform and what we launched 2.5 years ago, which is live art workshops, that is definitely something which, to be honest, in regular circumstances might not have happened, because artists and artisans, because they've not been tech enabled and they've not used technology much, they're a little scared of tech, right? Like, probably other than WhatsApp, which they now all know how to use well, and that's almost the lowest common denominator. Everyone understands how to use that. Beyond that, they don't really like the idea of using technology much. So I would say the pandemic created those conditions where they were willing to experiment, they were willing to learn, they were willing to work with us on understanding technology, how to leverage it better, because they could see that at least this is something which is A, giving a new livelihood opportunity, and B, helping them take their art forward in a new way, create evangelists, create people who can talk more about their work as well. So I think while earlier it was a little more of a question of the fact that they knew me and there was some credibility, the latest business model has pretty much been because the circumstances came together in a way that it enabled them to try out technology in a new way. And I think now, because they can see that this works, they have access to a global customer base, and we manage everything for them, to be honest, right? Like, it's a completely assisted platform where even in a live workshop, there's always somebody from our team who's co-hosting the workshop with them. When we're pre-recording a masterclass, our team goes over there with them. It stays with them 7 to 8 days. We record a whole masterclass. Then we put in all the effort of editing it, adding subtitles, adding detailed information and research around that masterclass. Even while listing their paintings and artworks on our marketplace platform, we do it for them actually, right? We set up all the images, we write the descriptions, we research the stories, we do everything literally, right? So it is an assisted platform. So that simplifies things for them, because to imagine them being able to manage all of that on their own, it's a journey. There is a point where I do believe they will be able to do that, but it's a journey. I mean, at this point of time, because it's an assisted model, hence it's easier to convince them. But the ones who've been working with us for a while, I can see that they are on that journey where they will start being able to do it on their own at some point of time as well.
Right, right. So it's quite a lot of background work already done for them, and they are just, coming with their art and their knowledge and sharing it with the world.
Exactly that.
When you actually decided, that, okay, this is what I want to build with these people, what was, your plan of action? If you can take us through the plan step by step.
I honestly, I don't know if I had a plan, because the beginning was a passion project, right? Like for me, it was just like, I find this beautiful and I want to take this to the world, and I'm sure I'll be able to find people who find this beautiful as well, right? So while the origin didn't really start with too much of a plan, but yes, now definitely, because we think, we found a little bit of a product market fit, as they say in the startup world, where we can see that there's, repeat users, people who keep coming back for more and more workshops with us, people who buy more and more artworks and products with us, right? So now, yes, we have a plan in place, or some semblance of a plan, where, we have targets around, okay, every month we want to onboard X number of new artists, X number of, new traditional arts and crafts, we're not already working with, how many masterclasses we are going to create, how many paintings we're going to and artworks we're going to add onto our platform, how many new customers we're going to target, right? Like what budgets we'll have around marketing. So now, yes, there's a proper pre-planning exercise and targets and goals around everything that we're doing.
Any business, big or small, requires some kind of footing in terms of investment, after which you can think of starting something, actually going to the consumer. So how big was your initial investment, if any?
It was substantial, because our initial model was a very inventory focused model, right? We had to buy handbags, rather we had to invest in creating the designs that we wanted for the handbags and keep enough inventory. I must have invested over 50 to 60 lakhs in the course of, the first 2.5 years or so in the business. And how I kept that going was because I kept working as well along with that. I mean, because this started as a passion project, so it was something that was, a side project for me. And while I was still working and earning, and a lot of what I was earning was basically going into the business to be able to sustain the business and provide the initial investment for the business. But over the last, 2.5 years, honestly, like we're making enough revenue to be able to hire, invest back into the business, invest in creating masterclasses. But once, in the last sort of 8 to 9 months, we realized that now we've hit the point where to hit the next level of scale, we do require outside capital, because, without outside capital, if you're putting in, just reinvesting money from the business back into the business, there's a certain level of growth that you can get in the business, right? But if you want to really scale that up and really approach hundreds and thousands of users, for example, impact, thousands of artisans, then that does require investment in terms of hiring, marketing, brand building, building your tech platform, investing in creating masterclasses. So now we finally raised a little bit of external capital as angel investment. But initially it was all, my own personal investment.
So how many years did it take to actually break even and start seeing profits?
Actually, that only happened once we changed our model to the workshops and masterclasses model. So at least 3 years.
3 years, 3 years into business. All right.
Yeah.
You had the product, you had, the producers of the product, if I may say. What about the marketing?
I think definitely social media has been a very, very big part of our plan, because as I mentioned, these artists didn't really have a voice or presence in the online world at all. People had not really seen, their work. They had not seen the beauty of their work, the magic of watching, a master artist at work. I think our entire marketing is built on that, right? The showcasing and spotlighting beautiful work by amazing master artists. So, now our team, because we're recording master classes, so a large part of our team is just constantly traveling. We literally are going to, 2 to 3 different places in a month's time recording a masterclass, and that's when we're recording really high quality content as well. Where we've had videos and reels on Instagram which have done 3.5 million views, 2.5 million views. So that has the fact that we are really being able to create high quality content that people have never seen before. And some of these, actually, most of these arts and crafts are very magical, but some look more magical than others. Like there's Rogan art where, they take a small needle and the color is actually on the needle and it looks like it's embroidery, but they're sort of, spreading it across. I'll share that video with you. And it looks completely magical. The same thing with terracotta clay work. It suddenly just comes alive, on a terracotta plaque, right? So most of these heritage arts and crafts are beautiful. People just don't know about it. So the better storytelling we are doing, the more we are highlighting these master artists, the more stories we are taking from these traditional arts itself, because most of these arts are very rooted in beautiful stories. There are such beautiful lessons in each of these stories as well. I remember one of my favorite stories is from Varli art, which is about the home of ants, which is called a bhon, and how it says that when catastrophe strikes, when jab pralay aayegi, so the ants are who will hold the seeds of humanity and will help humanity recover again and restart again, which is such a beautiful lesson that the tiniest of creatures is what holds, our entire humanity, basically, right? So there's such beautiful stories, and I think just taking those and sharing those with people in a beautiful way, with the amount of respect it deserves, with the amount of beauty that it can create, I think that's literally been the hallmark of our marketing.
Yosha, how did you define your ideal customer? One I understand is that you always targeted global market.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you further define that?
I think it's pretty much been women, slightly, I would say 28, 29 plus. We also have a lot of, 50 plus, 60 plus year olds who join our workshops and masterclasses. But pretty much it's someone who respects culture, respects handmade, is well traveled, likes experiences, likes telling stories, likes to, put their money where they know it's impacting someone's life as well, right? That's pretty much an ideal customer for us, because these are the kind of people, like I said, we call them patrons. We don't call them customers, because that's traditionally how art has always,
absolutely,
been able to spread through patrons. And earlier the patrons used to be the royals and the kings and queens, but now it's us, the regular customer, who can be a patron, because we control so much power, not just through our purses, but through social media, through our voice. So I think for us, it's not a customer, it's a patron who feels deeply, when they see this work, they also feel that joy and magic in it, and they want to share it with the rest of the world. So that's pretty much our typical customer.
On a serious note, you're kind of presenting Indian arts and culture to a global platform, do you feel the responsibility, on your shoulders? Do you feel that, oh my God, this is much more than just, doing a class, online? How does it feel?
Definitely. It is a little scary for sure. Yeah, because I mean, what just started as a passion project, now, everything that we put out there, thankfully, I have a team which is very cognizant of that as well, that, the research team, especially, they feel deeply. I mean, the whole team is a very mission oriented team. They really believe in this mission. So everyone is really careful around, the information we're putting out. We try and cross check everything. We try and verify everything, because at the end of the day, none of this history and stories exist. They've been passed orally from one generation to the other. They've really not been documented. So, but and we talk within the team, we often talk about this, that what we're doing, it needs to be timely, but it also needs to be timeless, right? Like it should be as relevant and beautiful 10 years down the line when somebody sees our videos as it is right now. So it's a fine line to tread, that, we're still targeting an audience who's a DIY enthusiast, who want to try out on their own. But how do you make sure you still tell them that, hey, you can't, there's a line between cultural appreciation and cultural appropriation, right? And the fact that, sure, everything that we do, there's always an economic, income benefit going back to the artisan, but still, we have to be very cognizant of that and say that same thing to our participants, our buyers, and our patrons rather, always as well, that that respect has to be built into every interaction. And the team always emphasizes that to every person as well. We are very cognizant of that in every research material that we put out, in every video that we put out, and always, of course, making sure that spotlighting who the artists are, telling their story better, what the art form is, telling the story of that in as cogent and as honest a way that we can, with all the information that we can find. That's definitely like a big part of what we do. But yes, we do feel the responsibility of that, because none of this information exists. So what we are putting out there does need to be fairly precise.
And respectful always, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a very sensitive topic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yosha, let's talk about your team. When you started, like say 4 or 5 years ago, how many people did you get on your team from day one, and how many do you have now?
Literally one person who was managing all our operations and logistics, and he's still with us. So now obviously he's managing the operations and logistics team, but it started with just one person and me. And like sometimes you would hire freelance graphic designers for an year. Maybe we had a full-time graphic designer, but otherwise it was literally just one or two people in the first 2 years. Once we launched the workshops and we could see the work is scaling, the first hire we made was literally a community manager to co-host the workshops, because I personally co-hosted over 200 workshops in the beginning with the artists. Like the first 200 workshops was literally me hosting it with them. And then I realized, okay, now we need to scale this, so it can't be me. So then, the first hire after my operations lead was literally a community manager. And then slowly from there on, we've been building the team, like hiring graphic designers, because obviously design is a very, very important element of what we're doing. Social media, because again, storytelling is very important. So that was literally the next, hire we had, that hiring somebody to lead social media, then hiring somebody to lead tech, because that's again, building a culture tech platform. There needs to be somebody who needs to lead tech and keep building out further and making our user experience better. Now we have a whole team of content creators as well, people who lead recording the masterclasses, researching the masterclasses, videography for it, editing for it. So we now pretty much have a 15 people full-time team. And also interns are our superpower. We have about 15 to 20 interns at any given point of time as well to work with the team, because there's just so much work around designing, research, writing content. So that's a very important part of the work. And for me, the best way of hiring has literally been people who joined us as interns, interned with us for 6 to 7 months, because they love the work, they love the mission. And it's a lot of the interns have been people who reached out to me on their own, that we love what you're doing and what you're building, and can we be a part? And then they've gone on to join us full time, and now they're leading teams basically, and they're pretty much like heading most of the different parts of the business. So yeah, I mean, it started very small, but growing now.
Now that you've already established your company, you've become a leader of sorts. Tell me, how much is Yosha removed from me, Meraki? Can you separate yourself from your business?
I mean, I can't separate myself from the business. I don't think people who know about our business know me as much. And that's one of the problems my team has with me, for sure, that nobody knows that you're the founder. You need to be out there more. You need to be on our social media. You should be the face of the organization. I'm like, I'm a little camera shy. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I can do, I can do interviews, I can do panel discussions, but I can't be recording content and putting it out there. But yeah, that's one of the things my team tells me constantly. So I definitely can't remove myself from it. But I don't think, the world kind of knows me as the face of Meraki. It's in fact like a lot of people from within our team, like There's Vishakha, who's our masterclasses lead. So every time she's traveling, she always goes live. She records content from there. So, her face is much more on our social media than Agrima, who leads our social media, who's always doing these unboxing videos of our different art kits and, showing all the different things in the office. So it's the team, which is much more the face of the organization as far, from the organization side, other than, of course, the artists. I mean, for us, it's always the master artists who are the face of our organization. But yeah, I think I'm pretty far removed as far as anyone else might know of our company.
So how about the effort that you've put in personal branding?
Unfortunately, I haven't put in any effort into that at all, which is a bad thing. And, in fact, I remember like when I worked in fintech, I think I had a fairly strong personal brand at that time because I'd worked over 15 years in fintech. I'd worked across Asia, done like some really good projects. I was speaking at panels and interviews very, very often and, counted in these lists of, fintech leaders across Asia, this, that, and the other. So it just happened by itself, to be honest. I didn't really put in too much effort into it, other than the fact that, yeah, at least I would put myself out there and be, speak wherever a speaking opportunity came, up for me. I think now in this space of the artisanship world and the creative and culture industry, because this hasn't really been my career, so I don't really know everyone in this space. It's Yeah, I think it'll take a little while that credibility gets set up, but I do know that I should be talking a bit more. And I think in the startup world, there's this whole culture of build in public right now, that you talk about your startup journey. You kind of, whatever your challenges are, what your successes are, you talk about that a lot more on LinkedIn and Twitter. And that doesn't come to me naturally at all. I don't know if it comes naturally to other people, but it doesn't come naturally to me for sure. I'm quite a behind the scenes sort of person. I like to keep doing things, but I don't really like to talk about it much. But I do feel that, yeah, I need to be doing that more, because the more I repeat the mission of what we are trying to do, what we're trying to build, people have short memories. Nobody remembers things anymore. So it's my job as a founder to keep repeating that ad nauseum until people pay attention, right? So while I know that that doesn't come naturally to me, but I know I need to make that effort. So yeah, this year I've promised myself that I'm going to put myself out there more and talk more. And this podcast is what do we call this? A video
Podcast.
podcast. Sorry, is one of the ways of doing that as well.
Yosha, what are your top challenges? One being working across time zones. How is it like working across time zones?
Yeah, it's interesting, honestly, because I'm in Australia and my team is completely in India, and I have a young team. They all like working late hours. I mean, because we've built a very remote first kind of culture. I don't ask anybody to come to the office, to be honest, other than the 3-4 people who manage operations and logistics. So everybody works from home. And yeah, it's flexible timings. I mean, everybody knows their deliverables for the day, so they kind of manage their own time. I mean, yeah, we sort of try and do team calls at 11, 12 every day, but because it's a young team, they all kind of, wake up late, work late, and which for me then means that I'm working till like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. my time, most of the days as well. So yeah, it's interesting, but I think the work is so much fun that it never feels like, it's work. So I think that part I can manage. The bigger challenges definitely are, with artisan focused businesses, because everything is handmade. When you're trying to scale, um, how do you actually, scaling that supply side is very hard, because with every new artist that we onboard, kind of, it's the same effort all over again, that training them, co-hosting things with them, writing descriptions for their work, photography of their work, videos of their work, right? So it's a lot of effort. And of course, like, I think the biggest thing we need to try and do is how do we use technology better on that supply side of our business as well, which we've done well on the customer side. Like, we've created, good user experience, good user journeys, but we need to do that on the artisan side as well. That how do we better use technology to scale the supply side, which we've now started to plan for. So definitely using tech on the supply side is quite a big goal for us this year, because that's part of, like, overcoming this challenge of scaling the supply side. Because right now we're working with about 250 artists and artisans. If we have to scale that to 7 to 800 in this year, that will require use of much better and efficient use of tech than with what we're currently doing. Because at this point of time, we just kind of throw more people at it, but you can't continue to do that because even that becomes, A, inefficient and B, expensive. So we can clearly see now that we need to use tech much better over there. I think the other side is always sort of the customer side, that, how big is this market? Like, how many people would actually want to learn traditional arts, arts and crafts? Can that actually be in the millions of people? And hence, can this really be a big scalable business? And I think there we've kind of realized that yes, while the learning market might not be as big, but the buying market will always be a very big market. And hence for us, it's both these markets that we need to target. And our marketing, our content, our tech has to cater like equally well to both these sides of the market, right? Like people who might want to learn versus people who just come to us to buy. We need to make sure that both of these are really well catered to. And again, making sure that the user experience, the user journeys, everything that we would do on our website, the way we story tell, everything kind of works well on that front. So I think it's the challenge is we're at that stage where scaling is our biggest challenge, and scaling both the supply side and scaling both the demand side, right? Like it's what we need to work on this year.
Yosha, what would you tell someone who is considering starting a business, say a young girl or a woman in her early 30s? What would be your words of advice be?
I find it so hard to give advice on this front, to be honest. I think just making sure that you're doing something that you truly believe in, because I've run a startup before this as well, and I'll be very candid now that I don't think that was an idea I completely believed in. I launched it because I thought, oh, I want to launch a startup, I want to scale it, and I want to sell it, right? Like that was with the mindset with which I started it. And that doesn't work. Like there's, no such thing as a quick exit in 2, 3 years in a startup. It takes years and years to build something meaningful, right? So it does take a lot out of you. So it has to be something that you care about. It's beyond just, building a business. It's something that you deeply care about leaving in the world, right? So I think that's the one biggest thing, that find something that you can really care about. Otherwise, just starting up something is meaningless. There's enough and more businesses out there in the world. Just adding to that, I mean, doing a job is a great thing. I mean, yeah, we require that in the world as well. So it has to be something that is bigger and that you care about. And I think then just making sure that you find the right people to complement your skill sets as well. That's really important, because you can't do everything. I know for a fact that while I've been a product manager in tech, but I can't build the tech myself. So I do need that. I'm not there in India, so I do need people who manage my operations and logistics. I'm not the best at storytelling, so I do need people who are better at storytelling and can really, tell the stories of our master artists really well. So I think finding that complementary skill set of people, and now whether you can afford that or otherwise finding creative ways to be able to do that, like, sort of part-time, freelancing, there's enough and more options available where you don't have to pay out huge salaries to find the, right set of complementary skill sets. So that's quite important as well. And I think that's not something you can do much about, but having a supportive family really helps, because it's crazy hours. It does take a lot out of you. You're not always around for everyone. So I think, yeah, just making sure that, again, the close people in your lives, choosing them well is a very important part of being able to build, a business, if you really want to scale that business.
Right. And I also think, listening to your answer, that being wise enough to know what you're good at and what you need help with, to
Yeah.
differentiate between the two and not let your
Yeah.
ego and other things come
Oh,
in between.
absolutely. Oh, that's the other big advice as well, that if you want to start something, ego should just be like, out of the window. You are constantly asking for things, you're constantly asking for help, you're constantly putting yourself out there, ego cannot be part of the equation at all.
I have one important question, that you
Mhm.
work a lot, or I think you work on design thinking and
Mhm.
consumer insights, right? You base your, I think, business on it.
Yeah.
So would you define design thinking for the women here, and how to use it in the most profitable way?
So design thinking is literally just being able to observe human behavior in its context, right? Like, not be far removed, because I think big organizations, they've gotten so far removed from their customers, they have no sort of insight into what their customers actually do, and what how they live their lives, and what they do can be a part of their lives, right? So design thinking is literally just as simple as that, that the ability to know your user, what they're doing in their day-to-day life, how your product or your service can seamlessly be, a part of their lives without them even thinking about it too much, right? For example, like earlier, doing financial transactions was such a, like if I'm booking an Uber, doing a payment as part of booking that Uber is not something that I even think about anymore because it's just so seamless, right? So that's a very good example of design thinking, that everything else just fades into the background, and you should just be able to do whatever you're doing as a customer very, very easily. And just as the example I gave for our own business, that I saw customer insight that people liked my handbag and the art on that handbag, but and people, while others think that, oh, traditional arts is something that people don't like, that's not true, because clearly here in a new format people liked it, right? And in fact, everything we've built from there on has been based on either insights by talking to our users, or looking at our data, looking at how people are moving around on our website, where they're dropping off, where they're coming more to. So that's all part of design thinking, like just having conversations, observing your users face to face as well, like literally following them around, and be supplementing that with all the data that you might have, at your disposal as well. So it's a combination of, qualitative and quantitative insights, and putting them together into creating something that can be truly differentiated and yet seamless enough, to be a part of your customers' daily lives.
What are some of the sources that you rely on for consumer insights? Like any practical sources, if you can share with us.
So for us, I mean, obviously just looking at our own data. I mean, looking at Google Analytics, we use Shopify as a platform that has analytics as well, all our social media, looking at all the analytics across that as well, because it clearly gives you signs that what is it that people are more drawn towards, what is it that, just not drawing them at all. Looking at your Google Search Console, that'll show you very clearly what are the, search queries that are landing up, that are making people land up on your website, right? Like, all of this gives you quantitative insights. Then qualitative insights is having conversations with your users. For example, like for me, our live art workshops were such a great way of building these insights, because when I hosted those first 200 workshops with our users, I would make sure that I'm having a conversation with them. I'm trying to understand, like, why is it that you're doing a traditional art workshop? Like, what is drawing you to it, right? Like, what do you hope to be able to do after this with what you've learned, right? These were things that I would just ask in a conversation. Literally, it's not like I'm not doing marketing research. Literally, I'm literally just having a conversation with them and trying to understand, right? So honestly, there's customer insights all around us. For people who might have mobile apps, if you go to the app store, you'll see comments over there. That's customer insights. Like, anything that might be written, across anywhere about your company on social media, that's customer insights as well. So it's all around us. We need to just make sure that as a discipline, we take that feedback, we take those insights, and we funnel that into what we are building as well, right? Like, that needs to be a disciplined process.
Yosha, you've been featured on the Forbes, you've been featured in top newspapers across India, abroad. Uh, what has your experience been with the PR? Have you ever been, I wouldn't say bullied, but have you ever faced some kind of discrimination, or you've always been welcomed by the international media?
No, I think for us, our story is so strong, our mission is so strong that it attracts, a lot of journalists and writers to write about us. And, obviously I'm very grateful for that. And no, I don't think we've definitely ever faced any. I mean, the fact that this is traditional art, but it's being done in such a new way, right? That really, yeah, that really attracts a lot of people to write about us. And no, I definitely don't think I would have faced any discrimination, but I've definitely, like, that's one thing where I try and put myself out there quite a lot. I try and reach out to journalists on my own, tell them the story, just, anything new that we might do, I'll reach back again and tell them about it again. For example, in Hong Kong, we do this Indian wall mural festival called Katha, which we've been doing for 3 years, where it's really new, where artists, come from India, they paint public wall murals in Hong Kong, and the whole community joins in, and it's become a beautiful community-driven festival, right? So, like, anytime we do something new, I'll reach out and tell, our regular journalists who've written about us, and somebody then picks up and writes about it as well. So I think it's like relationship building, like everything else in life as well, that I've cultivated those relationships, and I try and keep cultivating newer relationships as well, whether it's for collaborations, it's for PR, it's for business development. I think cultivating relationships is definitely very important.
The funding with the angel investors, how much
Mm-hmm.
did you have to prepare, and how was your experience?
Yeah, definitely had to prepare a lot because what we're doing is very new. And traditionally, the craft artisan space doesn't really attract venture capital money. It's not really been a space where VCs or angel investors have invested in too much, to be honest. There's been a lot of grant funding or, CSR funding, but not really VC or angel investing in this space because it's a slow space, right? Like it's not something where, oh, like any typical tech startup, okay, put in X amount and it'll multiply 10x, within a year's time. That just can't happen in the artisan space. It needs patient capital basically, right? So that's something which needs a lot of education for the angel investors and the VC community as well. But I do say that it's pretty much one of the last untouched frontiers as far as tech is concerned, right? Like I remember that because I've worked in fintech, I've done a lot of work in like agri tech as well. And I remember like 7, 8 years ago, agri tech was pretty much like this sort of space where technology hadn't really been used. And, it was one of the last frontiers as well. But now suddenly, if you look at that space, there's lots of VCs and investors investing in that space because they can see the impact that technology has in that space. And I do feel that the craft and artisan economy is at the same sort of juncture that at this point of time, it does take a lot of education because we are category creators. And for category creators, you need to tell that story. You need to do that, sort of explaining the market a lot more. So yes, it's harder right now for sure. But I feel that, we are also in some way setting up this market well for maybe at 7 years down the line, someone else will be able to say that, oh yeah, this is, the culture tech and craft tech space was at this space like 7 years ago, right? So it does need a lot more preparation than I would say like any other startup would because it's not a space that has traditionally attracted venture capital money. But I think, yeah, just being able to tell the story, ultimately showing growth, being able to show that, yes, I mean, there is some things we've done in the business which are working really well and it shows the right amount of growth. But obviously, making sure that they understand that it's not going to be 5x 6x 10x in the next year or 2 years like any typical startup. So it does need patient capital and everything that we're going to do to be able to try and get to the milestones that we've set up for ourselves. I think that being prepared with that is very important. Knowing your numbers, being able to show growth, that's definitely very, very important. It's important in any space when trying to raise money, but a little more so in this space because it's not really been the space which has traditionally attracted angel money or venture capital money.
Right. You're kind of a torchbearer for the entire
Oh
industry,
my God.
creating a category, and thank you so much for that. You have deep insights from your fintech days, and how much of learnings from fintech have you brought to culture tech?
I mean, in everything in terms of my skills, everything, like right from sort of, customer insights, human-centered design, creating the product, creating user flows, little bits around graphic design, relationship building, stakeholder management. All of those are skills I learned as part of my career in fintech. So those obviously I've, brought over even over here, hiring, managing the team, all of that is something that I learned during my career and that I brought over as well. Uh, Obviously, the specifics of every industry are very different. I mean, knowing the industry, knowing what are the next what has been the past of that industry and what the future of that industry could possibly be. Those are very specific things in every industry which I've had to learn for this space. I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't really know, like, who are the different players in this space and what their journeys have been like, how have they scaled, what can the space look like in the next 5 to 10 years. That's something that I've had to kind of study, research, understand, and build an understanding for myself. But yeah, I mean, skills are transferable, but of course, the knowledge of each particular industry and space has to be built up. So that's something I've had to learn.
What is your view on women-led businesses in the future?
Um, I mean, I've done a lot of work on this as part of my fintech work as well. Actually, I've actually done a whole project on, women as customers in fintechs and women founded fintechs and how the numbers are abysmally low for both. Like even fintechs, which start like just normal fintechs, if you look at their customer bases, the number of women using fintech products is just so much lower across. And we did this research across Asia. And even when it comes to, sort of women founded companies, not just fintechs, but tech startups, and the amount of venture capital money that might be going to them, it's less than 2% of all venture capital money that goes to, startups across the world. So when the numbers are so low, hopefully they only go up, right? Like there's the only way forward is upwards. So that's my hope that, all of this changes, that we can have many more women-led businesses. Women as a customer segment are a well-recognized customer segment as well. That's definitely my hope. But there's tangible steps that need to be taken in order to be able to get there as well, which is the first one of which is that just measuring that data as well, right? Like whether it's fintechs looking at their customer bases and being able to give very, very quantifiable data that, oh, only 20% of my customer base is women, right? And the same thing for VCs as well, that only 2% of my invested companies are women founded companies, right? So just first having that data, being able to spotlight that data, and then starting to take tangible steps that, okay, we're going to, for example, a lot of Google, for example, have a women focused accelerator as well that we are a part of as well. A lot of organizations have started to focus on things like that. And while a lot of people tell me, oh, why do you need a women accelerator? I'm like, because the numbers are so low, right? I mean, finding like creative ways to spotlight the work of women-led companies is something that's required. When the pendulum has swung one way for so long, it does need to swing the other way for some time as well, for some balance to ultimately be established, right? Like I hear a lot of backlash against this. Oh, why is there so much focus on women-founded companies? Like it feels like you guys are getting an advantage. I'm like, sure, that's fine. Like I want women founders to have an advantage because we've come into the workforce much later. We've had much lesser time to be able to build the things that we want to. So if there are some advantages being given, that it's well deserved, and it needs to be there for some time, because like I said, the pendulum needs to swing the other way for some time before some balance can happen. So that's definitely my hope, that it's I do feel it's a good time for women founded companies. There's focus on it. There's a lot of mentorship for it. I hope beyond mentorship there's more money that starts coming in as well, which I see is starting to happen. So yeah, it's a good time to be a founder, and I hope at some point this whole distinction between woman founder and male founder just goes away. But I know there's a long way to go before that can happen. So the reality is that yes, right now women founded companies do need some attention.
Do you feel happy with what you've achieved till now?
Oh, that's a very difficult question. Yeah, I'm not a person who's ever happy with what I've achieved. I think, yeah, there's always so much to do. I wish I had many lifetimes to be able to do everything that I've set out to do. So I mean, I feel fulfilled in my work. Yes, I feel joy out of my work. I think finally I'm doing what I was meant to be doing. I do feel that. But am I happy with what I've achieved? No, there's a lot to do.
What are your future plans? What can we expect from me, Meraki, and Miss Yosha Gupta?
I do hope that we can really, our mission is that we want to digitize all the arts and crafts of India as a starting point, and hopefully reach to other parts of the world as well. Like we can literally be that biggest impact focused marketplace working with, heritage and culture across the world. I mean, that's the big mission. It's a very, very big mission though. So obviously baby steps right now, focusing on India. But yes, hopefully that's a point we want to be able to get to, where our ultimately our artists are well recognized. They have a strong voice. They can be creators like anyone else, basically, right? Like, people who have millions of followers on Instagram. That's what we want to make heroes out of our artists, basically. I think that's our internal mission. But yes, the external mission is that we want to be able to be the biggest impact focused marketplace for heritage arts and crafts, starting from India and hopefully across the world.
Fabulous talking to you, Yosha. I'm highly impressed with the clarity of your mission and vision,
Thank
and the
you.
hard work, and how sorted you are with your goals and the speed at which you're going. I wish you much luck, lots of luck, and
Thank you
lots
so
of
much.
recognition world over. Make India proud, and we are behind, to support you. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's lovely, lovely chatting with you.
Thank you, Yosha. Thank you for your time.